Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirement. It is Tuesday, April 7th, 2026. It's 5:30 p.m. right on the button. It's room G15 here at the State Capitol building, and a quorum is present. Welcome, everybody. The materials for today's meetings are in the commission folders and also on the legislative calendar. We are going to be taking testimony today. In general, folks, please keep the testimony brief and to the point. Let's start with approval of the March 24, 2026 meeting minutes. Senator Pappas.
I move approval of the meeting minutes.
Senator Pappas moves that the March 24, 2026 meeting minutes be approved. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion prevails and the meeting minutes are adopted. Senator Rasmusson here on behalf of Representative Nadeau presenting Senate File 4765 and House File 4429. Senator Rasmusson, Representative, you're welcome to go to the table or sit here, whatever you want. There he goes. This is 4429, it is. Senator, why don't we give the representative a moment? Senator, Representative, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity for a hearing on this bill. The bill in front of the committee would adjust the rules for reemployment after retirement for Minnesota teachers. Statute already permits eligible teachers who are at least 62 years old to enter into a return to work agreement with their school. This is something that we've allowed. This allows the teacher to draw their pension while employed. The bill before the commission would lower that age from 62 to 59 and a half years old. And this aligns with the 60 and 30 benefit implemented in the 2025 session. And this also is permitted under IRS rules governing in-service distributions. Typically, without making this change, reemployed retirees are generally subject to a $46,000 earnings limitation while they are under the normal Social Security retirement age. And so the benefits of this bill is that it allows teachers who want to continue to work without penalizing them. It allows school districts who want to keep those teachers employed, allows them to keep them employed, and it makes sure that when we have this time of shortages of classroom teachers, that there's more teachers available for Minnesota students. The bill also extends this program through 2030. In 2014, there was legislation that brought this suspension up to 2027. So this is something that the commission will have to reevaluate if this bill becomes law. And happy to turn it over to the House author to add additional comments.
Thank you, Senator Rasmusson. Well done. Representative Nadeau, the door is open.
He did such a nice job, Mr. Chair. I have nothing to add.
That is the kind of bill presentation we are looking for here tonight at LCPR. We have two people signed up to testify, folks. Would Mr. Maurer and Mr. Tensick, I guess one at a time, come forward? Mr. Maurer, welcome back to LCPR. Your comments, sir, to Senate File 4765, House File 4429.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Tim Maurer. I'm the Executive Director of the Teachers Retirement Association. First, I'd just like to take an opportunity to thank our bill authors, Representative Nadeau and Senator Rasmusson. Over the past year, the TRA Board of Trustees spent a significant amount of time looking at TRA's return to work programs, and these changes presented represent their legislative agenda for the session. The changes are intended to add flexibility for retirees who wish to return to work and for employers who may be having difficulty filling a position. And as pointed out in the letter from CAVMAC, there's no material impact to TRA's contribution requirements or to our funding status with the implementation of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maurer. Mr. Tensick, if you could come forward, please. Welcome back to LCPR. Please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Evening, Chair Frentz, members of the LCPR, Phil Tensick, Executive Director and CIO, St. Paul Teachers Retirement Fund Association. Similar to TRA, this is a proposal that the pension plan supports. We find that it's a useful tool for SPPS to bring back our most experienced teachers to the classroom during an era of a teacher shortage. Additionally, de minimis, if any, impact to the pension plan's financials. We never collected any forfeited earnings prior to the earnings suspension. And then going forward, the employer, as Representative O'Driscoll has pointed out, still makes contributions for these rehired retirees, so there's no impact to bringing in a retiree versus an active teacher to the pension plan. Thank you for hearing this bill. Thank you for the authors.
Thank you, Mr. Tenzik. That's all our listed testifiers. Assuming there are no other members of the public who wish to come forward and be heard, we'll go to member questions for our authors first. Any member questions? Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just some background and history. Senator Rasmusson, you mentioned that this is moving from 62 to 59 and a half. And you have made the comment about being eligible, the normal retirement age for Social Security. Normal retirement age is 67. Did you mean eligible for Social Security at age 62 because you do get the discounted benefit if you apply earlier than 67?
Thank you, Representative. Senator Rasmusson, do you want to tackle that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the reason I mentioned Social Security is there's the limit, the earnings limitation, while reemployed annuitants are under their Social Security normal retirement age. And so this bill would comply with IRS rules for in-service distribution and allow teachers to earn above that cap if they are reemployed.
Thank you, Senator. Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And then just a couple other follow-up questions. I'm not sure which of you wants to grab this, but when we made the exception a few years back because of the teacher shortage, we, I think, went below on the earnings, and I'm not sure if we went on the age limitation, because I know there are teachers who retired maybe under the rule of 90 who had come back and done some teaching as well. How does that affect these individuals who are not 59 and a half, who may be closer to 57 or 56 because of their year? Well, probably not anymore, because we've had a few years since the last group retired, but they could be sub 59 and a half. How does that affect them?
I believe Representative O'Driscoll said whichever one of you wants to grab it.
Thank you,
Senator.
Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. My understanding, but I'm looking to Ms. Lincheski to correct me if I'm wrong, is that they then would have an earnings limitation if they were to start their annuity at an earlier age. But happy to be corrected
Thank you.
if
Thank you,
nonpartisan
Senator.
staff say that's incorrect.
Thank you, Senator. Representative O'Driscoll, do you want Ms. Lincheski to comment?
Yeah, it just might be for the benefit of the commission.
Ms. Lincheski or Ms. Wilson?
Could you repeat the question? I'm so
Sure.
sorry. Chair
Sure.
Frentz?
A few years ago, when we made the earnings exception, we had also people who may have retired on the rule of 90, who at that time might have been 56 or 57 years of age. And again, that was a few years ago when that last group came through, so they might be not quite 59 and a half yet. How are those folks captured and affected in this proposed legislative change?
Thank you, Representative. Ms. Lincheski, you want to tackle that?
Yeah.
Or grab it?
And we could maybe even call up one of the folks from TRA potentially, but I think there is no impact. There's no different treatment of those people. They have retired, they're starting their pension, they get a full pension, but they can come back. Since we're suspending the earnings limitation, there would be no impact on their pension or on their earnings.
Thanks, Ms. Lincheski.
But maybe defer to Mr. Maurer.
Representative O'Driscoll, would you like Mr. Maurer to come back up for a sec?
No, I think that adequately addresses the issue. And the other thing I just want to make note of, you're not required to start drawing Social Security if you reemploy with your district. You can choose when you want to do that. But once you've chosen your pension, you can't restart that in the state of Minnesota. So if someone who's concerned about the earnings limitation under the Social Security law would be exempt on this as long as they didn't draw their Social Security benefit. They wouldn't be subject to that until they reach the normal retirement age of, for most people, 67 these days.
Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. Other member comments or questions? Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure I heard this or not, but whoever wants to answer this question. So do the returning teachers continue to pay into the pension fund and their employer continues to pay into the pension fund?
Senator or Representative?
Good. You've done such a good job.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Pappas. It's my understanding that they would not.
They would not.
They would, the employer would not be paying in, nor would the employee be paying into the plan, because they're also not accumulating any additional benefit, because they are in fact receiving their annuity,
Pensions now,
their pension
right.
already.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pappas. Any further? Representative Johnson?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Senator Pappas, for the question. That's one of my big concerns with this too, is by continuing to drop that age down, you'll have more people that retire to start collecting their pensions and then jump back into another position, where the more you have that happen, there's going to be less dollars going into that pension fund, except for St. Paul, the employer still does contribute. And I know we had this discussion on Representative O'Driscoll's bill earlier. And as long as, something like that is part of this final package where the employers would still be responsible to put something into those plans, so that it's not a double hit on those pensions, that'd be something I'd be looking for. So thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Rasmusson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I did want to make a correction because the senator from St. Paul was asking a question, and for TRA, there would be no additional monies going in, but for St. Paul teachers, as we talked about with Representative O'Driscoll's bill, they do have a different policy where the employer would be still contributing into the St. Paul teachers fund.
Mr. Chairman, I thought I heard Mr. Tenzik say that, but I just wanted to clarify.
Yes, so
Yeah.
a different treatment
Yeah.
between TRA and St. Paul.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rasmussen. Senator Pappas, you're good. We're going to go to Representative O'Driscoll.
Not that I'm hawking my own bills here today, but Representative Johnson and Senator Pappas, fine piece of legislation we saw. Hopefully that does make it in the final package on making the districts continue to contribute like they do in St. Paul teachers under TRA to help the plan. So every chance I get, I'm going to do a little pitch for that idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further member questions for the authors? Let's go back to the authors before we ask for a motion. Senator Rasmussen, Representative Nadeau, any final comments? Neither one. Representative O'Driscoll, given the comments, perhaps you'd be willing to make a motion on Senate File 4765 and House File 4429 be recommended to pass and incorporated into the 2026 pension omnibus bill?
Mr. Chair, so moved.
Senator Representative O'Driscoll moves the bill be adopted. Any discussion to that? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The motion prevails and the bill is adopted. Well done, gentlemen. I'm going to hand the gavel over to Representative Lillie.
Go right from the get-go. Welcome to your committee, Chair Frentz. Do you want to move your bill for discussion, or how? Or you
I do.
just want to proceed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members. I'm glad to present to you Senate File 4721 and House File 4514. Thank Chair Lillie for being the co-author of this bill. This reduces the employee and employer contribution rates and increases the COLA maximum for the PERA Correctional Plan. So this is a result partly of the funding status, which is considered a success in my book. And I thought we might ask either Ms. Lincheski or Ms. Wilson to do a quick review of the staff memo. And then I believe there's some testimony as well, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair Frentz. Ms. Wilson, would you be willing to walk through the bill, please?
Thank you, Chair Lillie. Senate File 4721, House File 4514 applies to the PERA Correctional Plan. Brief section by section summary. Section 1 of the bill lowers the employee contribution rates from 6.83% to 6% of salary. Section 2 of the bill lowers the employer contributions from 10.25% to 9% of salary. And then for the COLA increase, under the current law, the COLA for the PERA Correctional Plan is 1%, effective each January 1, unless the Social Security COLA is greater than 1%, in which case the COLA is 100% of the Social Security COLA, not to exceed 2.5%. Section 3 of the bill increases that 2.5% to 3%. And I would just point out on page 3 of the staff memo that the cost of the bill would be absorbed by the PERA Correctional Plan. Thank you, Chair Lillie.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wilson. Chair Friends, I see we have some people that'd like to testify.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if it's agreeable to you and the committee, I'd like to have the testifiers come forward and then happy to take member questions or concerns and give some closing remarks.
Sounds great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Anderson, welcome to, back to the Pensions Committee. Please introduce yourself and go ahead when you're ready, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Lillie and Commission members. I'm Doug Anderson, Executive Director for PERA. I want to thank the authors of this bill, Senator Frentz, Senator Nelson, Senator Rasmusson, and Senator Pappas, and the representatives Lillie, Nadeau, and Johnson. Since the bill is very simple and broadly supported, I'll keep my comments brief. PERA's board is pleased that this legislative initiative is addressed in this bill. We have frequently referenced our PERA scorecard and how we use it to set plan priorities. This bill is a result of that scorecard in action. The ability to propose lower contribution rates comes from an updated experience study, which significantly reduced the normal cost. Matching the contribution rates with the normal cost means current members and taxpayers are appropriately paying for the cost of benefits earned by active workers. Our scorecard shows this ratio of contributions to normal costs being adjusted from 119% to 102%, with the goal being in the ballpark of 100%. Positive investment returns have improved the funding ratio to over 105%. The positive funding status allows the plan to absorb the cost of an increase to prior service costs. By increasing the post-retirement benefit formula, it's going to better protect current and future retirees against inflation. And despite lowering contribution rates and improving inflation protection, the plan remains over 100% funded and has a funding sufficiency of over 1.4% of pay, meaning we would expect the plan to continue to improve its funding status. PERA believes a balanced approach towards more closely meeting our definitions for success are helpful to obtain stakeholder support. We're pleased to note that stakeholder support comes from active members, retired members, and employer groups. Thank you for considering this bill for inclusion in the 2026 Omnibus Bill. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Director Anderson. Chair Friends, I also noticed that there's some letters in our packet. There's at least three letters in our folders, so go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, there are letters in your packet which speak to much of what Mr. Anderson's just said. We're talking about a little bit of good news for the men and women who help keep us safe and for their employers. And the funding status is really the North Star of how we make these decisions. So we're doing some things that some of these men and women are going to be very happy to hear. And with that, Mr. Chair, happy to take questions or concerns from the panel.
Thank you, Chair Friends. Any member questions? Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I don't mean to be the one who chimes in on everything, but some of this stuff is things I have some experience on, and maybe some of you saw me visiting with the House members over here. I wanted to make sure that they were aware of the fact that since this plan is becoming fast approaching 100% funded, we, by law and by doing the right thing by folks, have two choices. Number one, we can increase benefits, which is a nice thing, but it also increases liabilities with the plan. By reducing the contribution rates, we are able to still maintain the 100% funded, maintain the benefits without having to adjust the benefit set and incur future liability should the fund not be as robust as it is right now, which is a solid and wise move. Plus, it gives folks a few more dollars in their pockets and also saves the employing entity some contribution rates as well. So just for the benefit of the committee, since I did tell the House members that just a few moments ago, I just thought I'd get on the public record and say, what's he telling secrets about? Well, that's what we're telling secrets about, so.
Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. Chair Friends.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative O'Driscoll, thank you for once again just putting a little boundary on what we're doing here. You know, it's 102.2%, and you have repeatedly called our attention to the liabilities in the future, and I appreciate that. We've had a lot of discussions about cost of living increases in this panel over the last few years, and we're making some changes here. They're not massive, but they're going to be helpful. And one of the pension principles, as you know, has always been to try to protect the buying power of folks when they retire. So we're taking a step in the right direction. So thank you for that, Representative O'Driscoll.
Any further member questions? Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Chair Lillie. And I just had a question, Mr. Anderson. Is this a plan where membership is growing? Is it staying relatively flat? I'm curious.
Mr. Anderson.
Chair Lillie, Representative Nadeau, thank you, Senator. I can just speak to the current number of memberships that is over 4,000 active members, about 1,800 retirees, which is a little different than a lot of other plans. A lot of other plans have a higher number of retirees per active member. So this is still a relatively new plan since it's only been around since 1999. It's been gradually growing in active membership. Of course, the retiree group is growing fairly significantly, but it is a plan. It has a positive cash flow to it. There's more contributions coming in than payments coming out because of the relative size of actives to retirees. So a relatively young plan and growing.
Representative Nadeau. Thank you. Thank you. Any further member questions?
Don't say I never helped you.
Seeing none, Chair Friends, any final comments, or would you like to?
No, but thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members. You know, we make a lot of hard choices here, but I don't know that I think this one is that tough a vote. And I would ask members to support the passage of this and inclusion in the 2026 Omnibus Pension Bill.
Thank you, Chair Friends. Chair Friends moves Senate File 4720 and House File 4514 be recommended to pass and be incorporated into the 2026 Omnibus Pension Bill.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I believe that was Senate File 4721. And I think you said 20.
I did. It's, correct that to 4721. Good catch. Very good catch. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Seeing none, the bill is on its way to be included. Do you want to do your other one since you're out there, or? Does that make some sense? Wasn't there? Is that a bad?
Okay, so we're going to go
40, correct. So Senator Friends, I'm just going to, since you're there, and take advantage of that, sorry for other folks, move to item number 5 on our agenda, and Senator Friends will go ahead and discuss Senate File 4588 and House File 4517.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Glad to rejoin you to ask for your support for Senate File 4588. This has to do with moving the investment return assumption for calculating joint and survivor annuities to the Standards Appendix. Mr. Chair, I do love pensions, but I do want to phone a friend here and see if Ms. Wilson would walk the LCPR through the significance of the appendix versus statutes. So members, this will be the last time you hear me put this on the record, but I have to have this explained to me every once in a while. Mr. Chair, if Ms. Wilson would just trot out a little bit of the difference between the appendix and the statutes, I think it'll make it easier for members to see why this is such a great bill.
Thank you, Chair Friends, and Ms. Wilson, please help us.
Thank you, Chair Lillie. So there are certain assumptions that are in the statutes that the plans have to use, but I believe it was in 2018, we moved some of the assumptions to the LCPR standards for actuarial work. And so that's where a good chunk of assumptions are. But one of the assumptions that stayed in the statutes was the joint and survivor assumption. And this bill has been requested sort of at the request of TRA, but applies to all the pension plans administered by MSRS, PERA, and TRA to move just this one assumption to the appendix and take it out, and it would still stay in the statutes. But I can go into more of what the bill does, but that sort of gives an overview of the standards versus the statutes.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Chair Friends.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Wilson. So the significance includes the hoops you have to jump through comparing the appendix to statutes. LCPR is allowed to have the executive director put things into the appendix, and as we all know, takes a little bit more to motorize through the full statutory process, which means we have to trust people outside of this committee, which is a different meeting. The request to move the assumption, as was mentioned, comes from TRA. I know that TRA doesn't feel they have to testify, but Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to make them available if members think that's helpful. And with that, would appreciate the LCPR support for the bill.
We have quite a few member questions, so Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And a question for staff or the bill author. Does, we've talked about the assumed rate of return as a commission before. When it comes to calculating basically the value of our assets and unfunded liabilities, we have a number that is in statute that we updated a few years ago. Would this mean that you could have a difference between what that number is for calculating unfunded liabilities and have a different number for calculating these annuities?
Ms. Wilson, Ms. Wilson, please.
Thank you, Chair Lillie, and thank you, Senator Rasmusson. This might be a question ultimately for Doug with PERA. But as far as the assets versus liabilities, that might be a question for him. What this assumption is at 6.5% is different than the 7% rate of return assumption that is in statute. The joint and survivor assumption, rate of return assumption, is already different than the 7%.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Is it all right, Mr. Anderson comes up, or are you, Senator Rasmusson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Wilson. That's helpful to know that there was already a difference in state statute, and so that this would just be giving some more flexibility on potentially updating that. So I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any further question? Seeing none, back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members, for the question. Thank you to staff for the clarifying remarks, which are always helpful. Members, this is fairly straightforward. We're talking about efficiency in the way we do things, and I would ask for your support for Senate File 4588 and have it moved to be incorporated into the 2026 Pension Omnibus Bill, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chair Frentz. So we have that motion before us. Any questions? Representative Nadeau.
I'm sorry. I was just, so what, I think this is a question to Ms. Linczewski. So if we're changing one, which one would trump? I mean, do you understand? I mean, we're changing from one statute to the next. We're providing more flexibility, but one seems like it would trump. And would it then not have to come back to us to make those changes if we leave it in statute?
Ms. Linczewski. Or Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Lillie. Representative Nadeau, so what the bill does is it requires, if someone wants to change the 6.5 joint and survivor return assumption, they can bring a motion to this pension commission to then have it changed. That change would then go into the appendix. Otherwise, the 6.5 will just stay in statute, but if a different number is used in the appendix, say for TRA, then that is what TRA will use. But this commission will be the one that has to approve it, or under the bill, if the commission doesn't approve it within a year of the request being brought, it is automatically updated in the appendix to the amount that was brought by the organization or the association.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
I appreciate that. I'm sorry, but
No, it's
it was bugging me. Thank you.
So with that, Chair Frentz moves that Senate File 4588 and House File 17 be recommended to pass and be incorporated into the 2026 Omnibus Pension Bill. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Your bill is passed and on its way. Representative Jordan? And then
Representative Jordan, welcome to the LCPR. Thanks for presenting House File 4402. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. This is a bill that was brought to me by the city of Minneapolis. It is an error in the way a former public works employee's PERA accrual was calculated. The city and the employee have been working together to correct the issue, but they can only correct so much of it administratively, and so now we're coming to the legislature for a fix. PERA has advised that a legislative fix is the only way to resolve the entire issue. My goal here is to make sure that this public employee has access to the benefits that he earned. But for most of the details, I will leave it to the city to explain, to go into how some of that administrative stuff works. So with that, Mr. Chair, I would love to hand it over.
Thank you, Representative Jordan. Ms. Topinka, welcome back to LCPR. We also could have a staff review if you prefer, Ms. Topinka, or you can just fire away. Up to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can start, and then maybe staff can fill in if I miss anything or.
Well
get
done.
anything
Fire away.
All right, thank you. For the record, my name is Katie Topinka. I'm the Director of Intergovernmental Relations for the City of Minneapolis. As Representative Jordan shared, we had a former seasonal employee who was hired in 2016 and then again each year through 2022. And there were if an employee's seasonal position lasts longer than 6 months, they should be reported for membership in PERA. There were some changes between them when the employee was first hired in 2016 and then when they were hired in later years between the way those calculations work, and staff can maybe help explain that part. But the employee was employed each year between 2016 and 2022 for a seasonal position that ended up exceeding 6 months. And so he should have had deductions for PERA starting in 2017 through 2022 for his service, but that information was not reported consistently or correctly to PERA. So we have worked with this employee and PERA to remedy everything we can without legislative approval. But due to the statute of limitations related to PERA correcting the service credit record prior to 2019, we do need a special legislation to be able to do that. So we would also like to ensure that this employee can get the contributions they're entitled to. So the city has worked with him, with committee staff to support the drafting of this legislation, and should it pass, we're committed to bringing it forward to our city council for approval of the special legislation.
Thank you, Ms. Topinka. Members, we do have a 1A amendment. Representative Jordan, I could have a member of LCPR move the amendment. And would you like the staff to describe it?
Yes, Mr. Chair, staff was pretty instrumental in identifying the issue with the amendment, so it'd be great if they could explain it. And if anyone wants to do me a solid and move my amendment, I'd appreciate it.
The chair moves the 1A amendment. I see you reaching for the button, Representative Johnson. Chair's already moved it. Let's have the staff do the description of the amendment, then we'll see if there's discussion, then we'll vote the amendment on. Is this Ms. Wilson? Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Frentz. So we received information today, and this is different from what is in my memo. In my memo, I state that if the member had purchased service credit under the bill, that they would be vested in the PERA General plan. We learned today from PERA that they will not be vested in the PERA General plan. And so the reason that they won't be vested is that at the time that the employee terminated service in 2022, the law was that you needed 5 years of service in order to be vested. With the service credit purchase under the bill, this constituent would have 4 years and 8 months of service. And so what this amendment does, it makes it so that the law in effect at the time of termination will apply to the constituent, except that the constituent only has to have 3 years of service in the PERA General plan, which is what the current vesting is required under the PERA General plan. Thank you, Chair Frentz.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Members, we're on the 1A amendment. Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't know if PERA has signed up to testify, but I'd be curious to get their thoughts on this, especially the amendment. And the reason is I guess the question for me is why would we kind of, for this individual, move the vesting requirement different than everyone else and not allow them to buy another 4 months of service credit to vest? And I'm just worried about the precedent that could send. So I want to see what PERA has to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rasmussen. Ms. Strange's at the table. Just as the one that moved the amendment. I think it has to do with the termination date and the desire to make this employee whole, but I will let Ms. Strenge speak to the 1A amendment. Ms. Strenge, welcome back to LCPR. Introduce yourself and present any testimony to Senator Rasmusson you want to share.
Thank you, Chair Frentz. My name is Amy Strenge. I'm the policy coordinator for PERA. PERA does not have a position opposing the purchase of past service as a remedy. I think that we would have a concern making an exception for a member. We do have members that have been deferred, and the law at the time they terminate applies to them. It's a part of our statute that's there, so I do think we may have some concern on that. We're happy to continue conversations and see if there's something we can work out, but at this time, the amendment does concern us.
Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Strenge. Would there be a way for us to change the bill that would allow the past employee to purchase an additional 4 months of service credit to get to that 5-year vesting? Or is that not, or would that run into other issues?
Thank you, Senator Rasmusson. Question for Ms. Strenge?
Yes.
Chair Friend, Senator Rasmussen, I think that's something that we'd have to look at, so I wouldn't want to say right now, but we can go look and review the situation again to see what could be done.
Thank you, Ms. Strenge. Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to make sure I understand, so the employee did work for the city of Minneapolis for 4 years and 8 months. Is that correct? Or how long did this employee actually work for the city in a period that would have been eligible for PERA?
Ms. Topinka.
Mr. Chair and Senator Rasmussen, I may want to ask we do have someone here from our HR team, so I may want them to help me with that question just to make sure it's right. I think it's a little bit complicated because they were a seasonal employee who was rehired repeatedly, and so I think the calculation of figuring out what's eligible is not an easy answer, and maybe staff can help me with that too, but.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Topinka. I think the staff review included the suggestion that there was 4 years and 8 months. So I think we're working on that assumption unless there's some other testimony. I did note in the record that we have the HR employee, but you only need to bring them forward, Ms. Topinka, if you think the testimony is going to be different from that. Hi, welcome to the Pension Commission. If you could please introduce yourself and present your testimony. The question is the duration of the employment of the employee.
Yes, thank you, Senator. My name is Josie Vautrin, and I'm a project manager in the Total Compensation Division in Human Resources at the City of Minneapolis. So initially, when we had worked on this, drafting this bill, we had included, I believe it's 8 months, and I'm sorry, I should have pulled up the spreadsheet in preparation for this, but there is a section of time in 2016 that this person did work for the city that would have then put him over that 5-year vesting period. In consultation with PERA staff, we removed those months based on our understanding of advice from PERA. So including those months, which would have been the entire time that he worked for the city, that would have brought him over those 5 years.
Thank you very much for that testimony. I think that's helpful. Senator Rasmusson, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the city. I guess, Ms. Strenge, I don't know if you can provide any color on that or on why some months could be included or not included. And it's fine if you don't have that information, but.
Ms. Strenge.
Senator Frentz, Senator Rasmussen, the issue that we have a little bit, and again, if we could take some time to look at this again and work with the city, is that our definition of a seasonal employee means 6 months or more. And so if that member is hired in a position that is seasonal, expected to only work 6 months, they're not enrolled in PERA. And I believe that's what happened in 2016, is that member then worked less than 6 months, and then in 2017 worked more than 6 months. And so that exclusion no longer applied at that time. But we're happy to chat with the city of Minneapolis and see what we can go back and forth on.
Thank you, Ms. Strenge. Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Strenge. And I guess here's my concern with it. If I am very supportive of fixing an error that an employer made, right? Where if PERA contributions should have been made, if the clock should have been running on vesting for PERA, I think that's what LCPR should do. We should correct that error. However, what it sounds like is that even if there was no error to begin with, if the city of Minneapolis and everything was done correctly, it sounds like this employee wouldn't have had enough time to vest. And so that, I think, is where I get concerned with this amendment, is now we're kind of changing that clock so they would have vest. I'm okay fixing errors to make sure that we do right by employees, but I'm not okay changing the rules after the fact to make someone vest who wouldn't have vested if everything would have been done correctly. But I just want to make sure that's my understanding is correct of the facts. And so feel free to correct me if I'm misunderstanding the impact of A1. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Rasmusson. I think you are on the issue before LCPR, so I applaud you for raising it. I think we have some questions for PERA and also for the city. Members, let's go to member questions for either the bill author or the testifiers first. We have the option, of course, if we're going to talk about an amendment where purchase of service credit becomes an issue, to lay this over and work on it a little bit. But before we do that, member questions, further member questions for the bill author. Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if it's necessarily directed at Representative Jordan, but two things. I tend to agree with where the assessment that Senator Rasmusson had, that we want to treat everybody in an equal and fair fashion. What door gets opened if we have someone who's 4 years and 9 months away, or 4 years and 10 months away? To be able to go back and buy service where you actually didn't have the service can become problematic in the future, I think, for this commission, similar to bills that we've heard in this commission. As a matter of fact, this year about one bill in particular where an individual had left service under the assumption that they were leaving early under a TRA covered position, and said, hey, now with the new rule from last year, I'd like to have those benefits. And we've never really done that before, where we said, when you leave, here's what your benefit set's going to be. The on-ramp for that person was to come back and work another year to be eligible for the new and enhanced benefit. I guess my question is there a way that this individual could be employed by the city of Minneapolis again for a period of at least 4 months to round out that 5 years of service and legitimately make them eligible for a benefit under state law right now?
Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. I think that's a question for either HR, Ms. Topinka, or Representative Jordan. Whether or not the employee might want to come back and put in 4 more months, though, is going to be secondary to the bill before LCPR, so we're going to have to do something tonight. But why don't we have some testimony first from the city? We'll go from there. Welcome back to LCPR. Hasn't been that long since we saw you.
Sure, yes, thank you. Still Josie Vautrin with the City of Minneapolis. So the short answer to that is no. And without going into the specifics of that person's, personal life, the answer to that is no, and it is something that we had explored pretty extensively.
Thank you, Ms. Vautrin. Representative O'Driscoll.
And then the second question that I have, which is the one I always ask at this time, is how are we funding this? Is the employee paying for a portion of it? Is the city paying for a portion? Do we also have the back invested, or the returns, and who's paying those? And have parties been advised accordingly as to what their obligations would be if in fact we do move forward with this particular piece of legislation, Mr. Chair?
Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. I believe the city's picking this up, but why don't we have that testimony put on the record, just to be clear. Ms. Vautrin, do you want to tackle that, please?
Sure, yes, thank you. We do have a commitment from the department that he worked for, that we would be covering the entire cost of those years.
Thank you, Ms. Vautrin. Representative O'Driscoll, you're good. Other member questions? Representative Steer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is for one city and one employee. A question for PERA. Are we opening Pandora's box here with other claims in the future, or is this going to end with this bill?
Thank you, Representative Steer. Ms. Strange, he said PERA, that must be you.
Senator Frentz, Representative Steer, the actual purchase of the past service is, again, not a concern that we have. I think that we are concerned about the precedent that's set by adjusting the vesting period for this member that didn't have the service and would not have been entitled to a benefit at that time. We're happy to look and see if we can figure out that service issue, if there's something there, but I do think we have a concern about the precedent that would be set.
Thank you, Ms. Strange. Representative Steer, you're good. All right, members, here's what I think we're going to do. Let's have Representative Jordan speak to her preference as the chief author. I think we're looking at the potential to hold the bill over and provide some space to talk about options, purchase service credit, whatever. We still have time to make it part of the omnibus bill. Representative Jordan, it's your bill. We do want to help the person you're trying to help. Tell us what makes the most sense.
Mr. Chair, I'm fine to lay the bill over. My goal with this is to make sure that this public employee gets the benefit that he earned. So if the best way to do that is delay it over, figure out some wordsmithing, that's fine by me.
Thank you, Representative. That's very helpful. Members, that'll be the intention to lay the bill over. Ms. Vautrin, Ms. Topinka, thank you for bringing this forward. You got some runway here, and Ms. Lincheski and I were just talking, you can have a discussion about purchase of service credit, who pays, that kind of thing. So with Representative Jordan's help, you might be able to put this together with that. House File 4402 is laid over. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, we're now on item 6 on the agenda. That is Senator Westlin, Senate File 4587, and Representative O'Driscoll, House File 4694. Senator Westlin. Thanks for coming to the testifiers table. I see Representative O'Driscoll hanging back a bit. With that, Senator Westlin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. This is actually a very simple bill. Currently, under Section 356.24, Subdivision 3, Paragraph C, there's a requirement that plan administrators and vendors annually disclose easily understandable documents for administrative fees and rates of return. That same document that is supposed to go to participants is also required to go to the plan to the LCPR. This has been, as I understand it, a nightmare, to say the least. And on the request of LCPR, they would like to stop receiving these items. Initially, the purpose of having these statements sent to our LCPR staff was to ensure that these things were actually being prepared. However, some vendors have made it particularly difficult for staff to process their filings by emailing hundreds of PDF documents attached to emails, those little scamps. So LCPR would like to stop receiving these things. And so that is the basics of the bill. I would certainly allow staff to fill in any blanks, but that, as I understand it, is the issue that we are addressing.
Thank you. Well done, Senator Westlin. I do have Ms. Lincheski here, who could, I suppose, briefly review the staff memo,
Very briefly. Thank you,
including
Chair
the part
Frentz.
that says nightmare.
Yes, thank you, Chair Frentz, and thank you, Senator Westlin, for bringing this. Just a little context, this has to do with these supplemental plans. So we have a statute that says no public money can go into supplemental plans unless it is listed in the list of exceptions. One of those exceptions is for deferred compensation plans, and there's a very lengthy definition of what that means. To be a deferred compensation plan and to have public money, any public money going into these plans, you have to comply with a bunch of things, one of which is providing this disclosure to all the participants in the plan. A few years ago, we were hearing from mostly teachers that they were not getting this disclosure. They were getting 110-page prospectuses that were supposed to be this disclosure. And they didn't know about fees, what they were being charged. They didn't know about investment return over these periods. And so they came to us and they wanted to figure out if there was something that could be done so that there would be more of this disclosure. Our only solution, having no enforcement authority, was to come to the commission and say, could we amend the statute so that we get these and we can then see what they look like? Are they easily understandable? So we have been getting them. So we do know that they are being prepared. We think they're being provided, but there's no way for us to verify that. So bottom line is, Senator Westlin is absolutely correct. We are being inundated. As in, Molly's been handling these, there'll be emails coming in with hundreds of PDFs attached to them. And somehow we're supposed to organize that and have that available, put it on our website. So we're hoping that maybe we can get rid of this requirement.
Thank you, Ms. Lincheski. Members' questions? Representative O'Driscoll.
As the House author on this bill, and I want to thank Senator Westlin, fine piece of legislation here. And then, as Ms. Lincheski and I know, as we have had, both have had experiences with people with this. And I want people to really understand the context of what this is and the amount of staff time that's involved in this. Anytime a public employee wants to put money into a 403B or a 457 plan, the local unit of government would, have to hire or go under contract or get approval for an employee to be able to have their money to be deferred into this. It doesn't mean that a district or a city or a county specifically is going to have, here's our plan. Literally, someone could come in and say, here's what I want as my 403B. Fiduciary or my 457. We're talking about hundreds and thousands of these forms that are coming in. And to post them on the website and to have staff be responsible for trying to figure out how this particular lines up with this particular in this particular district, we don't have the resources to do that. And I fully believe that most people aren't going and looking at these. By contacting whoever provides them their 403B custodial services, they can get this information at a much faster and more expedient method to get this information. I suspect that once that stuff goes up on the website, our staff gets a call that says, can you tell me which one is mine? And that's not the job of the staff for the pension commission. So once again, I wanted to underscore, fine piece of legislation to reduce that administrative burden on the staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. Representative Nadeau.
So, other than Molly, who's going to be upset if we pass this? I mean, are there people that have become reliant on this at all? So, other than Molly, who's going to be mad?
Representative Nadeau, whom would you like me to direct that question to?
Senator Westlin.
Senator Westlin.
So, Mr. Chair and Representative Nadeau, my understanding is that LCPR staff has not received a single request for a copy of the disclosure statement. So I am going to say nobody is going to be upset by this.
Thank you, Senator Westlin. Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This does sound like a really, really good piece of legislation.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Representative. Members, further questions before we go to Senator Westlin for any final remarks? Seeing none, Senator Westlin.
I have no final remarks.
Thank you, Senator Westlin. That is right in our price range. With that, Senator Westlin, do you want to move that Senate File 4587, House File 4694, already described as a fine piece of legislation, be recommended to pass and incorporated into the 2026 Pension Omnibus Bill?
I would very much like to move that.
Senator Westland's motion is before us. Members, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion prevails. Thank you, Senator Westland and Representative O'Driscoll. Members, we are now on to Senate File 3828. This is Senator Limmer's bill, House File 3512, Representative Robbins. Understand Representative Robbins is not here yet, and so we're going to bump this on the agenda down one before we take it up. I don't know if anyone is in touch with Representative Robbins, but I think she's just run a little late. We just texted her. Okay. With that, members, all right. Members, we do expect Representative Robbins to be here momentarily. We've just texted her. We do not have other legislation on the agenda, so I propose we recess for 3 or 4 minutes, try to get a read on whether Representative Robbins is soon to be here or not. With that, we'll stand in recess. We'll say 5 minutes, but it'll be more like 3 or 4.
Insert G. I don't know what this is for.
3228. This was done at 6, this was way back on March 2nd. This must
Oh,
not be.
okay.
I think that's the
Okay.
amendment, Representative.
Members, the Legislative Commission on Pension and Retirement is going to come out of recess as Representative Robbins is here now. Representative Robbins, welcome back to LCPR. Thank you for adjusting your schedule. We have before us, again, Senate File 3828, House File 3512 as amended. I know there's a DE amendment, Representative Robbins, and I do have Ms. Lincheski. If you would like a brief staff review, it's not necessary. Is that something you'd like Ms. Lincheski to run through briefly?
If the committee would like that, I'm happy to have her do it. I just want the committee, I appreciate you having us back, and I want you to know we've all worked very hard, and there's broad agreement on this, so I would welcome Ms. Lincheski.
Thank you, Representative Robbins. Ms. Lincheski.
Thank you, Chair Frentz and Commission and Representative Robbins. The bill goes back to, this topic goes back to the bill we took up like several weeks ago relating to Maple Plain. This is the Maple Plain Fire Department. It is currently in the Statewide Volunteer Firefighter Plan. They would like to terminate. If you recall, the issue that we had a few weeks ago was that PERA was going to calculate the benefits using present value. That was unacceptable to the firefighters after a vote and lots of discussion. So we think the solution is the DE1, which is in your materials. I can very quickly talk about what the DE1 does. First off, Section 1 requires PERA to transfer assets, liabilities, and records from the Statewide Volunteer Firefighter Plan to the Maple Plain Fire Relief Association, which is still in existence. They will set up a trust to receive the assets. Paragraph B notes that Section 353G.17, which governs transfers, applies to this transfer, except as changed by Paragraph B. There are quite a few changes. So basically, we pared down the statute so that there's only kind of the bare bones requiring certain things that are necessary to make this transfer. There is in your package, or in your folder, a markup of 353G.17, which shows what's left that needs to be complied with. Significant changes to that statute is that the vote of the firefighters, which would have been done by PERA, will now be conducted by the Relief Association, and in fact has already been done. So they'll be able to talk about that. I understand the vote was nearly unanimous. Another significant change is to require the transfer occur a little quicker than what it would occur under the statute. It would not occur until January 1, 2027 if we follow the statute. Under the DE1, it will have to happen within 60 days of the effective date of the omnibus pension bill. Section 2 states that after the transfer, the Relief Association must make distributions in accordance with Section 424B.22, which also may be familiar to the Commission. This was the statute that was the focus of the Gustafson-Nadeau bill that we took up and considered, that the Commission considered and approved a few weeks ago. This has to do with terminating a relief association, and we changed some language in that statute. So the distributions then have to be made in accordance with this from the Relief Association. Section 3 deals with these supplemental benefits. These are little payments that are required under 424A of the statutes. This relates to all relief associations and the statewide plan, and these are basically $1,000 payments that need to be paid to anybody who gets a lump sum from either a relief or the statewide plan. The Relief Association would pay those small payments. They're intended to cover tax liability, and then can seek reimbursement from the Department of Revenue. So the Section 3 of the DE deals with that issue and says that the city could make those and then seek reimbursement, or the relief is then required to do so if the city does not. So that is what is addressed in that Section 3. And I think the bottom line here is that PERA then does not have to administer these assets and these distributions and can then just transfer it out to the relief.
Thank you, Ms. Linczewski. Thank you, Representative Robbins. Senator Limmer, welcome back to LCPR. We've just reviewed the DE amendment. Members prepared to have a motion to adopt the DE. If there are questions, now is your chance. Seeing none, Senator Limmer, do you have further remarks you want to bring forth before we vote on the amendment?
No.
Thank you, Senator Limmer, for your brief and to-the-point answer. All right, members, all in favor of adoption of the DE1 amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion prevails, and the amendment is adopted. My compliments to the authors for the work that's been done. We have 3 testifiers who have listed here. We'll start with Roy McCoy, is that right? Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
Welcome to LCPR. If you could please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Thank you, Commission members. Ray McCoy. I'm a 48-year-plus member of the Maple Fire Department, and I've been requested to read the letter from our Relief Association president, who was unable to attend here tonight. As president of the Maple Fire Relief Association, thank you for the recent passage of Senate File 3897, House File 3703. Modifying the process for terminating a Firefighter Relief Association retirement plan. Your support of the Fire Relief Associations forced into termination is appreciated, and I know our fellow firefighters from departments affected is greatly appreciated. I'm writing to request the Legislative Commission on Pension and Retirement support Senate File 3828, House File 3512, and the amendment presented before you. The May Plain Fire Relief Association membership met on Monday, March 30th, voted 13-1 in favor of withdrawing our special fund money from PERA. This is the official stance and position of the May Plain Fire Relief Association. I respect trustee board member Troy Dennison's right to state his personal perspective. However, the Relief Association membership has directed the Relief Association to proceed with these steps to ensure all members who have served their communities so well are paid fully and fairly without the calculations of present value. The City of May Plain made the decision to terminate the May Plain Fire Department, terminating all firefighters from our position as May Plain firefighters. This decision was very difficult after nearly 100 years of operation. In the process, we joined PERA State Volunteer Fund Plan because we thought it was safe, a secure place to hold our funds while we went through and completed the termination of our plan. When our Relief Association members and city officials found out that the assets of a Relief Association would not be fairly distributed among members, many members under 50 and over 50 expressed concerns of this inequity. The city shared this concern. This led to a long, involved process where we worked with the city to come to a fair resolution. That effort has been complicated a bit because the Relief Association joined the Statewide Volunteer Fire Fund. I ask that you support the local decision that was made, which will treat all volunteer members in an equitable manner. Thank you for your time in consideration of this matter. Sincerely, Justin McCoy, President, May Plain Fire Relief Association. Thank you.
Thank you, Firefighter McCoy, and thank you for bringing forth the result of all the work all of you have done. I realize you've had to be here before, and we appreciate it, and not just the firefighters, but the city leadership and all of that. So with that, we have 2 other testifiers, members, including the Minnesota State Auditor, Julie Blaha, Auditor Blaha.
And Mr. Chair,
Representative Robbins.
if I may be excused, I'm still chairing the Fraud Committee, and now that Senator Limmer is here, you're all in good hands, and I appreciate the committee's consideration.
Thank you, Representative Robbins.
Thank you.
Oh, it's on now, Senator Limmer. Madam Auditor, welcome back to LCPR. If you could please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Yes, thank you, Senator Frentz and members of the commission. My name is Julie Blaha, and I'm your state auditor. I'm speaking in favor of the agreement worked out in Senate File 3828 and House File 3512 that I think puts us back into a place that's a better fit for how these firefighters have been structured historically. It better fits the wishes of the firefighters, and I think it really honors the local control that they're really used to. So I really want to commend those who came up with this, like Director Anderson of PERA, again, Director Lancheski, and of course, everyone in Maple Plain. I think everybody out there had a good role in this as well. So this would basically shift them back under kind of our jurisdiction with fire relief associations, and we are ready to help assist in any way we can with finishing up this process. So with that, we urge your support. And if you have any very technical questions, I also have Director Rose Hennessy Allen here as well, if you want to really dig in.
Thank you, Auditor Blaha. Well done. Mr. Anderson, do you want to come forward and testify? Members, there's also a submitted testimony. That's a letter from Troy Dennison in your packets. Mr. Anderson, welcome back to LCPR. If you could please present your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Frentz. I'm Doug Anderson, Executive Director for PERA. When the LCPR first heard this legislation at the LCPR meeting on March 3rd, I testified in my role as Executive Director of the SVF to share my concerns. PERA's board did not have a position on the bill at that time. On March 12th, the PERA board considered this legislation, and the PERA board adopted a position which opposes PERA being required to administer the special legislation. The proposed amendment to the legislation does not require PERA to administer the special legislation, which aligns with the PERA's board position, so we are thankful to the Commission for the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson, and thank you for your work getting the amendment to where it is. Members, that's all our listed testifiers. Seeing no one else who wants to come forward to testify, let's go to member questions. First, we'll have Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for this workaround, Senator Limmer. Nice job. I do have a question, I think. It's really kind of on subdivision 4. It's the transfer process. And I just want to make sure, and maybe this is a question for the auditor or Rose Hennessy, is there enough time? It's talking about having, the transfer needs to be complete within 60 days of the effective date or the passage. And I'm wondering, since this really hasn't been done as far as I know of, is that an adequate time to make that transfer?
Thank you,
Or Mr.
Representative
Anderson.
Nadeau. That's a good question. Mr. Anderson, you want to take a shot at that?
Chair Frentz, Representative Nadeau, yes, that is adequate time.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further questions or comments? Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question, there was an A1 amendment dated March 2nd in our packet as well. I'm assuming since the DE1 was adopted, that's not necessary this evening, but just wanted to make sure from a housekeeping perspective, so this didn't come back to us yet a third or fourth time.
According to the language at the top of the amendment, Representative O'Driscoll replaces the bill as amended by Senate File 3828.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, members, further questions or comments before we go to the author? Seeing none, Senator Limmer, you're in good shape here. Final comments.
I've learned the longer I've been in office, the least I say, the better the result. But I do want to say that I have to admit, I did not have a lot of work to do on this. I want to thank the city officials and the people that represent the Maple Plain Fire Department and the lobbyists that are in the room that actually worked well over the spring break and a bit earlier than that. And of course, our Ms. Lancheski that helped resolve this issue. It's really a credit to them working together to find a common goal. And I'm proud of the work that they have done and would hope that this commission would approve the work.
Thank you, Senator Limmer. And the chair echoes your comments for the city, the firefighters, everybody, including the hard-to-value patience that you showed as we work through this. There is a process to it, and I think you've got a great result here. With that, Senator Rasmusson, would you be comfortable moving the adoption of Senate File 3828, House File 3512 as amended?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Rasmusson. Members, all in favor of Senator Rasmussen's motion, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. The motion prevails, and the bill is adopted. Thank you for the patience there. For those from Maple Plain, the process now will be that this will be incorporated into the pension omnibus bill, which will move on then to be adopted by the full legislature, and you have done great work here. Members, that's the end of our agenda for tonight. Looking ahead to April 14th, we'll have two bills related to fire relief. We'll have a bill adding county commissioners to the healthcare savings plan. We'll have a bill that amends the combined service annuity statute for members in both TRA and PERA, and we'll have a bill reducing employee contribution rates and increasing the COLA for St. Paul teachers. With that, thank you, members, for your patience. We are adjourned.